All right, so today I want to start by talking about a tweet from Zuby Music. And he says, a great sign of a decadent society is one where people actively fight to have their rights removed and freedoms restricted. Now, it's a very good and eloquent tweet in that, yeah, that's where we're at in society, that the people that are vilified the most are the ones that are trying to defend freedom, and the ones that are praised, at least on average, are the ones that are fighting to to go the other way. And I think it's really a combination of things. I think number one, it's um, you know proof or just examples of just fundamentally not understanding history, because it was just what was it, 75, 80 years ago that we we fought World War II, right, to try and gain freedoms and prevent the world to from falling into the hands of the Nazis and whatnot. And the same thing happened a lot throughout history. And I think that's the first thing. And I think the other thing too is I think that it's people that just are genuinely ignorant. And it's a lot of these people, it's not their fault. The problem is that they're fighting for something that's, making us head down a very dark path. So that's the problem, is that it's very hard to get through to these people, and it's very hard to have an honest conversation when they're just so ignorant. And like I say, it's not necessarily their fault a lot of the times. It's really the fault of schools and universities and the mainstream media and whatnot. But yeah, that's it's a very good way of putting it. Like I say, that's you know we have massive amounts of people that are actively fighting to have rights removed and freedoms restricted. And I mean, it's also showing that, do these people not know that most of the world would love to have what we have? I mean, there's a reason why everyone wants to come to the West, right? So yeah, that's the problem. That I think people are just so beyond comfortable that they're at this point. I mean, speaking of that too, in that Iraq vet here puts out, we're at a weird place in human history where through great achievements we've created a utopia of safety and plenty. Weak people who normally wouldn't have survived in nature aren't subject to natural selection. Now we face the consequences of them ruining everything. And it's a very good way of putting it, in that throughout the vast majority of history, in fact, probably 99.9% of it, these people that are fighting to remove freedoms, and the more the more this socialist and these lefties who want free everything and who are fighting to destroy the system and to get rid of free speech and gun rights and everything, these people would have been killed throughout the vast majority of history. And it's not that it's we're happy about it, we're just pointing out reality. The thing being is that nowadays we have the luxury of free stuff, right? Like the vast majority of history, we didn't have free stuff. Now we can give people free stuff. They don't have to provide anything to society whatsoever, and they can take out tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of resources every year and not provide anything back in return, right? Like for 99.9% of history, that was not realistic. That was not something we could do. Now we can do that. And like looking back in history, those are the people that would have been killed off. The problem now is that those are the people that are increasingly having more and more kids, right? And it's the people that normally would have thrived who are having less and less because their resources are being taken from them. So again, that's kind of a very good way of putting it. In that, yeah, we kind of, I mean, things are good in some senses, but they're also really bad in some senses. In that, everything we have can be taken away, like in the blink of like the drop of a hat, right? Like people think that we live like so comfortably these days, but they don't realize that everything, like almost overnight, everything could be taken away. I mean, what happens if there's a massive power grid failure in the middle of winter, right? And we can't get it back going for a week or a month or 6 months, who knows? Yeah, like you think we're living comfortably. Yeah, let's wait and see if there's a power outage when it's minus 20 or 30 for a couple weeks. Like last year there was a good almost a month where it was below minus 20. So Yeah, that is a big problem. Not to mention too the food supply system too. Like people don't realize that everything is working like a well-oiled machine, and people don't realize that such a small problem like within the shipping industry, people don't realize that even if a small thing goes wrong, that could mean no food for entire countries, right? Like that could mean literally no food for entire countries. If you don't have food storage or the ability to grow or, collect your own food, you're done, right? Like you're done. And that would mean chaos. So again, like I say, we have it very good these days, but people don't realize just how easy it can be taken away. So anyway, the next thing I wanted to bring up is from Brian Lilly, and he says it is now considered offensive to question the gun policy of Justin Trudeau by YouTube. This video was doing well, now it is hidden, and if you do find it, you must click through this warning. Now, again, you have a lot of these people that like to claim, oh, social media censorship doesn't exist, and all this garbage that you hear those people say, but yet they actively, I mean, here's the thing when it comes to social media censorship is that the argument is, oh, they're not outright banning everyone. I mean, that's not really the argument, but that would be the argument that you can tell that these people are alluding to, and that they don't just ban everybody that disagrees with them politically, right? Like they only ban the quote unquote crazy people. The problem is that they have other ways of censoring people. There's other ways of just outright banning people from platforms. There's shadow banning, there's removing followers, which Twitter does on a regular basis. YouTube does that as well. Um, like I said, they do stuff like this too, to where it's age restricted. You have to click through to get to it. They don't allow it to trend. They make it a lot harder to share. So there's plenty of things that they can do to censor people without actually outright banning them. And that's increasingly the path that they are taking because like I say, if they just outright ban everyone they disagree with politically, that's kind of rather obvious and hard to deny. If they just do the shadow banning and the not allowing them to grow, or at the very least not allowing them to grow nearly as fast as the average person would, that's a way of drastically limiting someone's reach while still not quote unquote banning them, right? So that's kind of what they're doing these days when it comes to that kind of stuff. And yeah, I don't know who it was, if it was literally the Justin Trudeau government, if it was just YouTube being like, hey, you're criticizing gun control, we're going to ban you. I don't know. I could easily see either one. But yeah, things are getting pretty scary. I mean, you have the heritage minister, that idiot Guilbeault, who's looks like they're going to go through. I mean, they kind of have been going back and forth for like 6 months now on this, maybe even longer. I don't even know how long it's been, but on this whole internet license thing. And I mean, there's going to be ways around that too. I mean, who's to say you don't just register your website in a different country? I mean, there's got to be ways of doing. I'm not great with computers, but there's got to be a way of doing that. So again, there's going to be loopholes, and I think that they know there's going to be loopholes, and they'll just use that as an excuse to crack down even further. So look out for that. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is Trump says Supreme Court pick most likely to be a woman. Apparently, he's announcing that today or tomorrow. I don't remember exactly when, but I think that he's going to go with the women because everybody knew what happened last time around, and that he picks Kavanaugh, and a bunch of false accusations, come out of the woodwork, namely that Blasey Ford individual. And again, they were all completely frivolous. And I mean, the first thing I wanted to point out is that people who do stuff like that should be subjected to jail time. And the same thing goes when it comes to lawsuits. If you bring an obviously frivolous lawsuit and it's thrown out, you should have to pay the money that you're suing for. Same thing goes for these kind of stuff. This kind of stuff. If you accuse someone of any sexual misconduct, whatever it is, if it's definitively proven that you made it up, which I think Blasey Ford's a textbook example of that, you should face whatever punishment the other person was facing. And this is something that happens way too much, like especially when it comes to divorce. Like you have all these women that accuse their ex-husbands or husbands of abuse, even though with no evidence, in an attempt to get money and or custody of the kids. Um, But again, that's something that's absolutely insane that goes on in society, that people can make accusations that, whether or not they go through, oftentimes destroy people's lives, right? Like I've heard plenty of cases where men have been falsely accused, and because of that they committed suicide. Like many cases, I literally know three or four of them off the top of my head. And again, were any of the women punished for that? No, like no. So it's just, and I believe that is illegal as well, like filing a false police report for one. But maybe there's other stuff. But again, like, why in the world are these people not punished? And that's the problem with these kind of things. Is that it's going to keep getting worse until people get punished for doing it right now, because right now there's only incentive to do it. So yeah, and not to mention too, even if he picks a woman, um, I would still look for some false accusations. It'll be very interesting to see what they come up with, because they can't do the obvious ones of if it's a man. But I would bet a lot of money that they'll pull some crazy stuff out of the woodworks, because especially considering the fact that it's somewhat controversial, even though the Constitution's rather clear that Trump should be able to pick. It is somewhat controversial, so I would say that would even inflame tensions even more. But nonetheless, I'm going to leave the video there. If you'd like to, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, especially, but also BitChute and Parler. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.